The house always felt different after midnight. Not louder, not quieter, just aware. Like the walls themselves leaned in to listen, waiting for something to happen. That night, the rain traced thin, restless fingers down the windows, tapping softly against the glass as the wind pushed through the old trees in the yard. The porch light flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale halo over the empty driveway. My son had gone out hours earlier, laughing as he grabbed his jacket, promising he wouldn't be late. He always said that. Now it was nearly 1 in the morning, and the only sound in the house was the slow hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock above the stove. Each second felt heavier than the last. I sat at the kitchen table with a cold mug of coffee between my hands, staring at the dark hallway that led to the guest room. That room hadn't been empty when I went to bed. He had arrived just before dinner, my son's friend. Tall, quiet, with a smile that never quite settled, like he was always holding something back. He said he'd crash here for the night because it was easier than driving home. I didn't ask questions. I never did. Now, the door to that room stood slightly open. I hadn't noticed it at first. It was just a sliver of darkness, a thin black line cutting into the soft glow from the hallway light. But once I saw it, I couldn't look away. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. I told myself it was nothing. He might have gone to the bathroom. He might have stepped outside for air. Still, my chest tightened as I stood, the chair legs scraping too loudly against the tile. I winced at the sound, as if I'd broken some invisible rule. Don't wake what's sleeping. I walked down the hallway slowly, my footsteps muted by the worn carpet. The air felt cooler here, carrying the faint scent of rain and something else, cologne, maybe. The kind my son never wore. The guest room was empty. The bed was still made. The pillow untouched. The window slightly open, curtains lifting and falling like shallow breaths. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I nearly dropped it. A message from my son, still out. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen, then back at the open window. Where had his friend gone? A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned, heart pounding, the hallway suddenly too narrow, too dark. Someone stood at the far end, half hidden in shadow. I couldn't see his face, only the outline of his shoulders, the way he leaned against the wall like he'd been there longer than I realized. Couldn't sleep either? He asked softly. His voice sent a shiver through me. And in that moment, I knew the night wasn't going to end the way I'd expected. I just didn't know how far it would go, or what it would take from me before the morning came. The rain eased into a whisper by the time he stepped fully into the light. The hallway lamp caught the edge of his face, revealing a tired smile and eyes that looked darker than they had earlier that evening. He ran a hand through his hair, like he wasn't sure what to do with himself standing there, in my house, in the quiet that had grown too thick to breathe. Sorry, he said again, softer this time. I didn't mean to scare you. I nodded, even though my heart still beat too fast. It's fine. I just thought you'd gone. He hesitated at that, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. I went out back for a minute. Needed air. The backyard door was still locked when I checked it earlier. I didn't mention that. Instead, I stepped aside, letting him walk past me into the kitchen. The overhead light flicked on with a sharp click, washing the room in a pale, unforgiving glow. He squinted, then laughed under his breath. Guess we both couldn't sleep, I said. Guess not. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms, studying the floor like it might offer answers. I poured myself another cup of coffee, though I didn't really want it. I just needed something to do with my hands. My son said he'd be late, I told him, trying to keep my voice casual. You're welcome to turn in if you want. The guest room's ready. I know. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. I saw something in the way he said it made my stomach tighten. We stood there in silence, the refrigerator humming between us. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on wet pavement, then disappeared into the night. The world felt far away, like we were sealed inside this small, bright box of a kitchen, suspended between what had been and what was about to happen. How long have you known him? He asked suddenly. My son, I replied. He nodded. All his life, I said with a small smile. Kind of comes with the job. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. I meant, before tonight. Before he introduced us, I thought about that. About the first time I'd seen him, standing awkwardly in the doorway with a six-pack in his hand, trying to look older than he was. About how my son had clapped him on the shoulder and called him a good guy, like that explained everything. Not long, I admitted. A few months, maybe. Feels longer, he said. The words hung there, heavy with something unspoken. I took a sip of my coffee and nearly grimaced at the bitterness. You hungry? I can make a sandwich or something. He shook his head. I'm fine. Just restless. I understood that feeling more than I wanted to admit. The kind of restlessness that settles under your skin, that makes even your own house feel unfamiliar. Do you ever feel like, he began, then stopped. He laughed quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. Never mind. Like what? I asked. He looked up at me then, really looked, and for a second I felt like I was the one being examined. Like you're living someone else's life. Like you took a wrong turn years ago and just kept going because it was easier than turning back. My breath caught. I didn't answer right away. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking the space between us. Sometimes, I said finally. He nodded, as if that was the answer he'd been hoping for. We moved to the living room without really deciding to. I sat on one end of the couch, he took the other, leaving a careful space between us. The lamp cast long shadows across the walls, turning familiar furniture into strange, looming shapes. The television stayed off. Neither of us reached for the remote. My dad used to say, he began, staring at the dark screen, that nights like this were dangerous. Dangerous? I echoed. Yeah. He said when it's quiet and you're alone with your thoughts, you start asking questions you can't take back. I swallowed. Did you ask any? He smiled, but it was a sad smile. Too many. The front door rattled suddenly, just once, like someone had tried the handle and thought better of it. We both jumped. I felt my pulse in my throat. Probably just the wind, I said, though the porch was sheltered. He didn't look convinced. I stood, peering through the window beside the door. The driveway was still empty, the porch light casting its lonely circle on the wet concrete. No sign of my son. Still nothing. He asked. I shook my head. He rose too, coming to stand beside me. Our shoulders brushed, just barely. The contact sent a jolt through me that I wasn't prepared for. I stepped away too quickly, bumping into the coat rack. Sorry, I muttered. He didn't say anything, but I felt his eyes on me. We drifted back into the living room, the air between us charged now, like a storm waiting to break. I picked up a framed photo from the coffee table, my son at a graduation, beaming, arms slung around a friend. Around him, a crowd of faces, all smiling, all certain of where they were headed. Your son's lucky, he said quietly. Why's that? He knows who he is. I looked at the photo again, wondering if that was true. Do you? He hesitated. I thought I did. A floorboard creaked upstairs. We both looked up, hearts in our throats, but the house settled back into silence. Maybe he's home, I said, hope flaring. I checked my phone. No new messages. He exhaled slowly. Guess not. The space between us on the couch seemed to shrink as we sat again, or maybe we just didn't bother keeping it. Our knees almost touched. I could smell his cologne now, subtle and warm, nothing like my son's usual clean, soapy scent. Can I ask you something? He said. You already are, I replied, trying to lighten the moment. He smiled faintly. Why do you stay up? Because I worry, I said. Because the house feels too quiet. Because I don't like going to bed before he's home. He nodded. That makes sense. Why do you? I asked. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. Because when I'm alone, I can't pretend anymore. The words hit me harder than I expected. We sat there, the clock ticking, the rain starting up again outside. I felt like I was standing at the edge of something, a line I didn't know how to cross, or how to step back from. The front door rattled again, louder this time. We both stood, my heart leaping into my throat. I reached for the handle, my hand hovering just above the cold metal. What if it's him? I whispered. He didn't answer. I opened the door. The porch was empty, rain falling in steady sheets, the light flickering. I closed it slowly, the click of the lock sounding final, like a decision being made. When I turned back, he was standing closer than before. Close enough that I could see the questions in his eyes, the same ones burning in my own. "Looks like it's just us," he said. And in the quiet that followed, I realized how dangerous my dad's words might have been, because the questions forming in my mind felt like they could change everything. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. The sound filled the spaces between us, loud enough to cover the uneven rhythm of my breathing. He took a step closer, then stopped, as if an invisible line had appeared on the floor. "Maybe I should go back to the guest room," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe you should," I replied. Neither of us moved. The lamp cast his shadow across the wall, stretching and bending it into something unfamiliar. He rubbed his palms together, a nervous habit I'd noticed earlier in the evening. I folded my arms, not because I was cold, but because I didn't trust what my hands might do if I didn't. "This is a bad idea," I murmured, more to myself than to him. He swallowed. "I know." The clock on the wall clicked over to the next minute. The sound felt like a countdown. "Then why does it feel like the only honest thing I've done all night is stand here with you?" he asked. His words landed heavy in my chest. I turned away, walking to the window, staring out into the blur of rain and light. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, older than I felt, tired in a way sleep never fixed. "You're my son's friend," I said. "You shouldn't be saying things like that." "I'm not saying them because I shouldn't," he replied quietly. "I'm saying them because I can't keep them inside anymore." I closed my eyes. For a moment, all I could see was my son's face, the easy grin he wore when he talked about the people he trusted. The weight of that trust pressed down on me, heavy and unyielding. He came to stand beside me, close enough that our reflections overlapped in the glass. Two figures, blurred into one by the rain-streaked window. "I don't want to hurt him," he said. "Or you." "Then don't," I whispered. Silence stretched between us again, thick and fragile. A sudden crash of thunder rattled the windows, making us both jump. He laughed nervously, running a hand through his hair. "Guess the storm's not done with us yet," he said. "Feels like it's just starting," I replied. We drifted back to the couch, sitting closer this time, the space between our knees gone. I could feel the warmth of him, a quiet, steady presence that made my thoughts scatter. "Tell me something," he said. "What?" "Do you ever wonder who you'd be if you hadn't made the choices you did?" "All the time," I thought. But I didn't say it out loud. "I wonder," I admitted. He nodded. "Me too." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I came here tonight thinking it would be simple. Hang out, crash, leave in the morning. But when your son walked out that door, it was like the air changed." My heart thudded. Changed how? Like everything I'd been avoiding suddenly had nowhere to hide. I watched him, the way his chest rose and fell, the tension in his jaw. "You're young," I said. "You've got time to figure things out." He turned his head to look at me. "What if I don't want to wait?" The question lingered, dangerous and tempting. I stood abruptly, pacing the room. "This isn't fair. To him, to me, to you." "I know," he said, standing too. "That's what makes it feel so loud." He stepped closer, then stopped again, respecting a boundary neither of us had clearly defined. His eyes searched mine, as if looking for permission, or maybe absolution. "Say the word," he said. "I'll go back to the room. I'll pretend none of this happened." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The rain softened, fading into a distant hiss. The house felt suspended in that quiet, like it was waiting for my answer. "I don't know what the word is," I finally said. He exhaled, a shaky breath. "Me neither." A light flickered outside, briefly illuminating the room in a flash of white. In that moment, everything felt too sharp, too real. I could see the lines of worry on his face, the uncertainty mirrored in my own. "I shouldn't feel this," I said. "But you do," he replied gently. I turned away again, pressing my palms against the back of a chair. "This will ruin things. It always does. Or it changes them," he said. "Sometimes that's worse." Quote. We stood there, the distance between us charged with everything we weren't saying. My phone buzzed on the table, the sudden sound slicing through the tension. We both froze. I picked it up, my hand trembling. A message from my son, on my way. Relief and dread collided in my chest. He's coming back, I said. His shoulders sagged, just a little. Guess that answers my question. Does it? I asked. He looked at me, eyes soft but resolute. For tonight, maybe. Footsteps echoed outside, the crunch of gravel under tires. Headlights swept across the living room, casting long, moving shadows. This is where it ends, I said, though it sounded more like a plea than a statement. For now, he replied. The front door handle turned. In the final seconds before it opened, we stood there, suspended in a moment that felt like it could tip either way. I wondered what my son would see when he walked in, 2 people standing too close, or 2 people pretending nothing had almost happened at all. The door opened, letting in a rush of cold air and the sound of rain. And as my son stepped inside, shaking water from his jacket, I realized the storm outside had nothing on the one that had just begun inside me. The house felt smaller after my son came in. Not physically, nothing had moved, but the air shifted, thick with things unsaid. He dropped his keys into the bowl by the door, the familiar clink sounding too loud in the quiet. Water dripped from the hem of his jacket onto the mat, each drop a tiny, relentless beat. Sorry I'm late, he said, brushing past me with a tired grin. Phone died. I nodded, my voice caught somewhere behind my ribs. It's fine. We were just talking. His friend stood a few steps back, hands tucked into his pockets, eyes on the floor. The space between us all felt carefully measured now, like we were standing on invisible marks we didn't dare cross. My son glanced at him. You good? Yeah, he replied, too quickly. Just tired. The word hung there, heavy with everything it didn't mean. We moved into the kitchen, the routine of it almost comforting. I poured him a glass of water. He leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the way the room vibrated with tension. His friend hovered near the doorway, half in, half out, like he wasn't sure where he belonged anymore. I watched them, side by side, and felt a sharp twist of guilt. The image of them together, easy, familiar, made the moment from earlier feel like a secret pressed against my chest. Storm's wild out there, my son said, nodding toward the window. Yeah, I replied. Came out of nowhere. He shrugged. Figures. Everything does these days. His friend flinched at that, just a little. I saw it. I wondered if my son did. I'm gonna crash, my son said, pushing away from the counter. Big day tomorrow. Good night, I said. Night, his friend echoed. My son paused at the hallway, glancing back at us. You two staying up? Probably not, I answered. He smiled, satisfied, and disappeared down the hall. The soft click of his bedroom door sounded final, like a lock turning on something I wasn't ready to leave behind. We stood there in the kitchen, the refrigerator humming between us. Guess that's my cue, his friend said quietly. Guest room's still there, I replied, though my voice lacked the warmth it had earlier. He nodded. I know. He didn't move. The light above us flickered once, then steadied. I noticed the small things, the way his fingers tapped against his thigh, the shallow rise and fall of his chest, the faint smudge of rain still darkening his sleeve. I didn't mean for any of this, he said. I know, I replied. Doesn't change it, though. No, I admitted. It doesn't. He took a step toward the hallway, then stopped. I don't regret talking to you. My heart stuttered. That makes one of us. He smiled faintly. You're lying. Maybe I was. We walked down the hall together, our footsteps soft, careful. The guest room door stood open, the bed still untouched, like it had been waiting all night. He paused at the threshold, turning back to me. The hallway light cast half his face in shadow, half in gold. Good night, he said. Good night, I replied. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us felt charged, like a held breath. He reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering in the space between us. I didn't know what he meant to do, touch my arm, my shoulder, or nothing at all. He lowered his hand. The door closed softly behind him, the sound gentle but final. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the wood grain, at the faint line of light beneath the door. My thoughts felt tangled, looping back on themselves, searching for a version of this night that didn't leave a mark. I went back to the living room, sitting on the couch where we'd talked, where we'd almost crossed something I couldn't name. The rain outside had slowed to a steady whisper. The clock ticked on, indifferent. Down the hall, I heard my son shift in his sleep, a muffled sound of movement, then silence. I leaned back, closing my eyes, letting the weight of the night settle over me. Nothing had happened, and yet, everything felt different. As the house drifted toward morning, I wondered which of us would be the first to pretend it hadn't. Morning crept in quietly, like it didn't want to draw attention to itself. Pale light slipped through the blinds, tracing thin lines across the living room floor. The house smelled like damp air and old coffee. I sat at the kitchen table again, same chair, same cold mug in my hands, but nothing else felt the same. The night lingered in the corners of every room, in the spaces between breaths. My son came out first, hair still messy from sleep, eyes half closed. He stretched, yawned, and smiled at me like he always did. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied, hoping my voice sounded normal. He poured himself cereal, the clink of the spoon against the bowl loud in the quiet. "You stay up late again?" "Couldn't sleep," I said. He nodded, like that explained everything. His friend emerged a few minutes later, moving carefully, like he wasn't sure he was welcome in the light of day. He met my eyes for just a second before looking away. "Hey," he said. "Hey," my son replied, cheerful and unaware. We stood there, the three of us, in a kitchen that suddenly felt too small. Every movement felt measured, every word felt chosen. "So," my son said, breaking the silence, "I'm heading out after breakfast. You still good to hang around here for a bit?" he asked his friend. "Yeah," he answered. "That's fine." Their eyes met, easy and familiar, and I felt something twist inside me. A jealousy I didn't want. A guilt I couldn't shake. My son grabbed his keys, kissed my cheek on his way out, and disappeared through the front door, the sound of it closing echoing through the house. Silence followed. His friend and I stood there, neither of us speaking. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space between us. "I should go soon," he said. "Okay," I replied. He didn't move. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," he added. "Life does that on its own," I said. He smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. "Yeah, guess it does." He picked up his jacket, hesitated, then slung it over his shoulder. At the door, he turned back. "Last night," he began, then stopped. "It doesn't have to mean anything. If you don't want it to." I searched his face, trying to find the right answer. The safe one. The easy one. "I don't know what I want it to mean," I admitted. He nodded slowly. "Me neither." He opened the door, letting in a rush of cool air and the sound of birds in the distance. For a moment, he stood there, framed by the morning light, like he was waiting for something, an invitation, a promise, a reason to stay. I didn't give him one. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stood there long after he was gone, staring at the empty space he'd left behind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my son. "You good?" I typed a reply, erased it, typed again. "Yeah, just a quiet morning." As I set the phone down, I wondered how long it would stay quiet. How long before the questions we didn't answer came back, louder than before. Because some nights don't end when the sun comes up. They wait. The house always feels like it's holding its breath in the early evening. Sunlight slips through the blinds in thin, golden lines, dust drifting lazily in the air like it has nowhere better to be. The kettle whistles on the stove, sharp and familiar, and I move through the kitchen on autopilot, mug, spoon, sugar, stir. Routine is a comfort. It tells me who I am. It tells me where I belong. Outside, the sky is clear, that soft blue that promises a quiet night. No storms, no surprises. At least, that's what I tell myself. My son's laughter floats in from the hallway, bright and easy. He's getting ready to head out, grabbing his jacket, checking his phone, moving too fast for the space he's in. I watch him from the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame, pretending I'm not memorizing the way he looks when he's happy. "Back later," he says, already halfway out the door. "Don't be too late," I reply. He grins. "You always say that." The door closes behind him, and the house settles into a quieter version of itself. The clock on the wall ticks, steady and patient. I sip my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. Then the doorbell rings. I pause. It's too soon for him to be back. The sound echoes through the house, unexpected, like a knock on a dream. I set my mug down and walk to the door, my footsteps loud in the stillness. When I open it, he's standing there. My son's friend. He looks slightly out of place on my porch, like he took a wrong turn and ended up somewhere he didn't mean to be. A small smile tugs at his mouth, uncertain. The air around him smells faintly of rain and something clean I can't quite place. "Hey," he says, "your son said I could wait here. He forgot something." I nod, stepping aside. Of course. He comes in, glancing around like he's seeing the house for the first time. I notice the way his eyes linger on the photos on the wall, on the framed memories, on a life that isn't his. "Make yourself comfortable," I say. "Thanks." We sit in the living room, the television off, the quiet thick between us. The clock ticks louder in here. Or maybe I'm just listening harder. "So," he says, breaking the silence. He's always like that. In a rush. Always, I reply. Some people are always running towards something. What if they don't know what it is? He asks. The question lands heavier than it should. I look at him, really look, and for a second I feel like I'm the one being studied. There's something in his expression, curiosity, maybe. Or something closer to longing. My phone buzzes on the table. A message from my son, running late. Might be a while. I read it twice. The house seems to lean in, listening. I set the phone down slowly, my thoughts racing ahead of my voice. I don't know why my pulse has picked up. I don't know why the room suddenly feels smaller. "Well," I say, forcing a smile, "looks like it's just us for a bit." He nods, but his eyes don't leave mine. And in the quiet that follows, I can't shake the feeling that this waiting, this simple, ordinary waiting, is the first step into something I won't be able to walk back from.